On behalf of SME Chamber of India and World SME Trade Center, and along with the Federation of Indian SME Associations, SME Export Promotion Council, with the support of Doha Bank, World Manufacturing Foundation, uh, International Business Forum of India, India US SME Business Council, India Canada SME Business Council, India GCC SME Business Council, Europe India SME Business Council, SME Chamber of India, as well as the SME Business Management Institute and Startups Council of India. I'm very happy and delighted to welcome all the dignitaries, speakers, and participants from the various parts of the world. The Global SME Economic Summit is a theme as today's webinar, which is going to discuss on how we can utilize the strategies to transform SMEs to revive and survive. Friends, all of you are aware that the banks, manufacturing industry, the foundation, WTO, ICC, even World Bank, Asian Bank, so many organizations putting efforts, and along with the WHO also putting efforts to to survive in this pandemic. We know that the impact of the health, wealth, and business and life also very much. And this is a very interesting. Rather, the Corona has shown the our capacities and capabilities. Corona has shown the what is the need of our. Corona has shown that how we should revive, how we should survive in this context. All of you are aware that SME sector always they are not thinking beyond 3 months. Now this is the right time to think about particularly SME sector, how they will survive in future. Recently we know that a lot of activities happen, but let me introduce today's eminent speakers. Our prominent speaker is today's Dr. R. Seetharaman, the MD and CEO of Doha Bank, which is a global speaker, inventor, a mentor for SME sector, for entrepreneurs and startups. Dr. Seetharaman, welcome to you. It's my immense pleasure to welcome the Miss Emmanuelle, Miss Ganne, the Senior Analyst, Economic Research and Statistics Division, World Trade Organization from Geneva, which is very interesting, supportive organization. Welcome, Miss Ganne. We are having Dr. Alberto Ribolla, President of World Manufacturing Foundation, who is putting efforts for the integration of the manufacturing industry, manufacturing institutions, government, policymakers, bankers, financial institutions, and inventors and innovators for how we can compete, how we can develop, and how we can think about back to future. So, Dr. Alberto Ribolla, welcome at this very important discussion. And of course, Dr. Viren Joshi is one of our office bearer, and mostly he is the person who is putting efforts for the development, the manufacturing, technological development. He's also mentor, and then he's very dear friend of SME sector. Dr. Joshi, welcome at our program to share your thoughts. And of course, so many speakers from the various parts of the world watching this, because today's important event, and what we are going to discuss, how we are going to give a message to the SME sector, and how the SME sector will survive and revive in this coming the pandemic. Rather, the third wave is going on. USA also facing a lot of problem. European countries also facing a lot of problem. India is also facing problem. The cases, corona cases, increasing day by day. So, but we should not stop our business. We should not stop our business activity, manufacturing activity, because we have to do more. We have to supply. We have to fulfill the requirement of the local and Indian local market, national market, international market. Let me give a glance of that. How the Indian SMEs are playing a vital role. Around 7 crore MSMEs in India, micro, tiny, small, and medium companies. They are putting efforts for the economic growth. They are providing the large employment. They are contributing more than 48% in exports. They are contributing more than 50% for the manufacturing, and they are the forefront for the large employment, particularly from unskilled to skilled. This is a major role they are playing, and mostly they are creating the new entrepreneurship. The new entrepreneurship, includes startups, young entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, the people, those are working, those are having a job experience, they're starting business. Those are, family members, they are starting with the family businesses. These are the activities the SME sector is playing very, very important in India. I am very happy to share that, in October 2020, we have record listing registration of new companies. New companies, 16,700 registered in 2020 October. It's a world record. I'm very much surprised and happy that, that means India is coming, India is back on the track. India is back in economic growth. India is back on a development point. Special efforts goes to Honorable Prime Minister of India. He is putting a lot of efforts. He is bringing stimulus packages for SME sector. He is bringing various ideas and initiatives for the empowerment of SME sector. I'm very much thankful to Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi and his team members. Those are putting a lot of efforts for the empowerment and strengthening the Indian SMEs. Looking at the current scenario in a different sector of the world, particularly in European countries, I speaking with a lot of entrepreneurs from the European Union and the organization heads, the government agencies heads, they are they are worried about it because how to survive the local companies, even the foreign companies already invested in that certain countries and certain sectors. Now the business activity is closed down. The migrant labor already gone, migrant employees already gone. How they will come back? How the bank will revive their the financial system? Because there is no 6 months, there is no turnover, there is no big business happen. So how the banks will lend? How the manufacturing industry will compete with the other industry? The Indian companies are now coming to on the track, economic track, but still whatever do we expect in last 2 months, still we have to achieve that. And when in that perspective, we would like to know what is a WTO's perspective and in research and development plan for revival and survival of SMEs from the various parts of the world. Looking at the particularly the point that most of the banking sector has stopped, they have stopped to funding the struggling Indian SMEs or struggling SMEs in the world. And in that perspective, Dr. Seetharaman is going to share his thoughts and his experience while working closely with the industry, the local companies, global companies, Indian companies, and most of the areas they have funded the companies. Uh, I would like to hear from Dr. Alberto that how the manufacturing industry will survive, how the manufacturing industry will revive, and to go for a transformation, go for the growth. And similarly, the Dr. Viren Joshi also going to share his thoughts about particularly how we can take forward this initiative. So I will not take much time, but I would like to hear from Emmanuelle that how the WTA created a concept or how WTA has done research for the revival of the the global SMEs, and particularly the area sector-wise where we can put efforts to to take knowledge and information from you and to share with the global SME sector. Thank you very much, and welcome again. I welcome all the speakers and the dignitaries and the listeners for this important webinar. Ms. Ganne, floor is open for you.
Thank you very much. Delighted to participate in this event. And a big thank you to the SME Chamber of India and the World SME Trade Center for having invited me to participate in this Global SME Economic Summit. I have some slides, if they could be shared, that would be great. And so I will actually start by giving you an overall picture of the impact of the pandemic on global trade, and then I will go deeper into SMEs, the impact on SMEs that we've seen, the research that we've done on that, and the measures that governments have taken. And then I will talk about some concrete initiatives. Well, you can stay on the first slide, yes. Some initiatives taken at the WTO. Now, as we all know, SMEs are at the heart of the global economy. And as you were rightly saying, they are at the heart of the Indian economy. But SMEs have been hit very, very hard by the current pandemic. This pandemic has shaken the world. It has threatened the lives and livelihoods of millions of people in both developed and developing economies, with, unfortunately, a particularly devastating impact on small companies. If you could move to the next slide, please. Now, we know that the COVID-19 trade shock has been sudden, it was severe and brutal. Supply chain disruptions were massive. Production plummeted as lockdowns and quarantines spread throughout the world. And even when there was production, it actually very often became difficult to move goods because there were very few commercial flights, very few cargoes, and so products got stuck at port, be the airport or seaports. Commercial flights were down nearly 3/4 between January and mid-April. 3/4, this is huge. And container port throughput also went down dramatically. But the COVID-19 pandemic did not only create a supply shock, it also created a demand shock, a fall in demand as consumers stayed home, just like I'm at home right now, and unemployment rose, and a shock that hit certain services industries particularly hard, and have in mind in particular the airline industry. Next slide, please. So it's therefore no surprise that in our trade forecast that we issued in April, these forecasts were particularly alarmist, and they set out two plausible scenarios. There was a relatively optimistic scenario, if I can call it this way, in which the volume of world merchandise trade in 2020 would fall by 13%, 1-3, and a pessimistic scenario where trade would fall by 32%. Now, the good news is that according to our latest trade forecast that were published in October, world merchandise trade appears to have rebounded very strongly during the third quarter as lockdowns were eased throughout the world. And so world merchandise trade volume is now forecast to fall 9.2% in 2020, which is much less than the 13% that we had anticipated in the optimistic scenario in our April forecasts. So things could have been much worse. Rapid government responses clearly helped temper the contraction. Next slide, please. This is confirmed by our latest goods trade barometers reading of 100.7 that you can see on the screen now, which marks a dramatic improvement over the 84.5 that we had in August. We published it on a very regular basis. And so this recovery in goods trade has been driven primarily by overall export orders. Container shipping also returned to above trends. However, downside risk still predominates, especially as some economies experience a resurgence in the number of COVID-19 cases, like what we're currently experiencing in Europe, which is leading to new restrictions and stay-at-home orders. So growth is likely to slow in the fourth quarter, according to our predictions, and international trade in 2021 is expected to remain still well below the pre-crisis trend. Next slide, please. Now, certain services industries like travel and transport have been hit particularly severely by the current crisis, as I guess all of you know and have seen. Now, overall, the decrease in world services trade has actually been more pronounced than for merchandise trade. And monthly services statistics that we collect at the WTO indicate that services trade continues to contract around the world. And year on year, it's actually down 23%, which is more than twice the decline that it was during the financial crisis, where it was 9%. And you can see here the decline for certain services sectors that is more important than for others. Of course, travel is so a huge decline, and transport as well. And this is particularly worrying as services now generate 2/3 of economic output, provide most jobs globally, and account for 40% of world trade. So services play a critical role, and you know that very well in India, because services play a very important role for the Indian economy. Next slide, please. Now, the pandemic has pushed governments to step in, and they've stepped in different ways. We've seen a rise in the number of export restrictions being imposed, particularly on personal protective equipment and personal protection products, so face masks, etc. And according to our trade monitoring that we published in June, 85 governments had introduced such restrictions by mid-May, and they took different forms from export bans to non-automatic export licensing procedures. Next slide, please. But this being said, when all types of trade measures are considered, there have been overall more trade facilitating measures that appear here in green on the slide than trade restrictive measures. So it's about almost 200 trade facilitating measures versus 165 trade restrictive measures. So this is an interesting trend, interesting finding. And also interestingly, 70% of these measures were linked to the COVID-19 pandemic, and almost 60% of the COVID-19 measures were trade facilitating. And you can see that at the bottom of the slide. Here again, the green bar is bigger than the, I don't know whether we can say it's a red bar or brown bar. And a few days ago, we published our G20 monitoring report that is limited to G20 countries, and it shows a slowdown in the number and coverage of both trade restrictive and trade facilitating measures. It confirms that most measures are trade facilitating, about 2/3 of COVID-19 related measures, and also that a third of these measures have been repealed. So we've seen this evidence of rollback. About a third of measures, trade restrictive measures, are being repealed. Now, our next trade monitoring report that will cover all WTO members will be out in a few days at the end of the month. So it will be interesting to see whether these trends are confirmed or not. So stay tuned. But let's have a closer look at the situation of macro, small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, as we call them at the WTO. If you could move to the next slide, please. And actually, you can move to the next one, because that was announcing the move to MSMEs. Thanks. So MSMEs are really at the heart of the global economies. I mean, they represent 95% of businesses worldwide. They provide 60% of employment. They are major employers of women, of young people, key driver of innovation. And many MSMEs depend on international trade for their activities, either because they export their products through direct or indirect channels, or because they import inputs to manufacture the products that they then sell domestically. The disruption caused by the pandemic has had devastating impacts on these firms, because given their small size, MSMEs often have very limited financial resources and borrowing capacity. And so they do not have the capital to survive an extended downturn. So they are really fighting for survival. If you could move to the next slide, please. So MSMEs are really at the center of the current crisis. They've been the most acutely affected business demography, with more than half, 50 to 60% of SMEs reporting that they have been severely impacted by the current crisis. Various surveys have also found that 40 to 50% were at risk of going out of business within 3 months. And they've been particularly exposed to the current pandemic because of their disproportionate presence in some of the sectors most affected by the pandemic and by social distancing and travel restrictions. And I have in mind, in particular, the hospitality and food service industry, travel, tourism services. So, of course, all of this has very serious implications for the recovery of the global economy and the return to full employment and government receipt of tax revenues. Next slide, please. So, recognizing this predicament, governments around the world, from economies of every level of development, have responded with general support measures, but also in many cases with MSME-specific COVID-19 support measures. And so we've been tracking these measures at the WTO Secretariat. And what did we find? You have the findings here on the slide. First, we found that most support measures focus on providing short-term liquidity to ensure that businesses can ride out the pandemic and also try to prevent unnecessary layoffs. So this is the first series of bars that you can see on the left-hand side. But beyond support for overcoming cash flow problems, some WTO members have also introduced measures to support MSMEs to engage and engage in international trade. So these measures take the form, for example, of deferrals of reduction in trade-related payments, such as customs duties or freight fees. There are some members who have introduced streamlined customs procedures to make it easier for SMEs to export products. And looking to the future, some governments have also implemented resilience measures, for example, to help MSMEs adopt information and communication technologies and help them go digital, or measures to improve the business environment, such as relaxation of corporate obligations, deferring of tax declaration, and tax audits. Next slide, please. Now, the issue of MSMEs at the WTO has, of course, taken on additional importance during the pandemic. But work on MSMEs at the WTO is actually not new. If you could move to the next slide, please. The importance of supporting this business demography was actually first raised in 2015 by the Philippines. And then in 2017, a group of WTO members launched an informal dialogue on MSMEs, which then led to the establishment of an informal working group at the ministerial conference we had in Buenos Aires in December 2017. So this informal working group now counts 90 members that represent around 80% of world exports and 60% of global GDP. And what is important is that the objective of this group is to become multilateral. Now, why such a group at the WTO? One may ask. Well, because members felt that this economically critical but highly vulnerable business demography needed help. That it needed help to trade. It needed help to benefit from trade to be able to grow. And here the numbers speak for themselves. While MSMEs represent the vast majority of companies worldwide, their participation in global trade is actually overall very low. According to calculations that we made that are based on World Bank enterprise surveys in developing countries, MSMEs direct exports amount to less than 8% of total sales in the manufacturing sector, compared to more than 14% of large manufacturing enterprises. Even though it seems to be slightly different in India, if I quote the number right, because you were saying that they represent 48% of export, which is a very high number, if I understood correctly. But looking at the situation worldwide, many MSMEs actually do not participate that much in international trade. And so this is what WTO members have taken note of, and the reason why they decided to establish this group. And why are they not participating that much in international trade? Because they face many challenges that are multifaceted. I mean, it's from the difficulty to access information on other markets, to lack of access to finance, including trade finance, difficulty to deal with burdensome customs procedures, and so on. So it's to try and address these challenges that WTO members created the WTO MSME group back in 2017, because they felt that the discussions that were happening at the WTO in existing bodies were not enough, that they were too scattered, and that they left aside some important aspects like access to information, for example. And I will come back to this point later. So they felt that a more comprehensive approach was needed. And because there is no universal definition of MSMEs, which is a question we get very often, the group leaves it basically to each member to define who their MSMEs are and which companies they feel should be helped. So the MSME group looks to support MSMEs trade through soft law, and this is a very important point, recommendations, guidelines, unlike some other work being done at the WTO. And it aims to work through existing WTO bodies where relevant and to promote concrete tools. And I will present one of these concrete tools in a minute. And the group aims to work as an incubator of new ideas to help MSMEs to trade and grow. And this is why dialogue with the private sector is so important. And I will say in a few minutes what type of communication channels they are between this group and the private sector. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to give you a brief overview of recent work that the group has been doing. It recently completed the technical drafting of a package of 6 recommendations and declarations, as I said, non-binding. It's soft law to support MSMEs. And this package includes the text on transparency. Transparency and policies related to MSMEs can be an important tool to help identify good practices and address challenges. So the recommendation put forward by the group includes a list of MSME-related information that WTO members are invited to provide on a voluntary basis during their WTO trade policy reviews. The second text is a text on access to information, which, as we know, is a key challenge that many SMEs face when they want to trade internationally. And the group's declaration here calls on WTO members to contribute to the success and prompt operationalization of the Global Trade Help Desk. And I will present in a later slide what this Global Trade Help Desk is, because it can be an interesting tool for Indian SMEs wishing to trade internationally. The third text is a text on trade facilitation. We all know that burdensome customs procedures are a key challenge faced by MSMEs. So recognizing that trade facilitation measures accrue especially for MSMEs, the group calls for the full implementation of the 2017 Trade Facilitation Agreement of the WTO and for exchanges of experiences to promote good practices that can help MSMEs. The fourth text concerns MSMEs' inclusion in regulatory development. Why? Because regulatory changes in the area of trade are often difficult to understand and comply with, especially for MSMEs. So to counter this challenge, the group has put forward a recommendation to promote the inclusion of MSMEs in the development of trade regulations to minimize regulatory burden. The fifth text is about market information. The group has put forward a recommendation to support the implementation of a decision that was adopted in 2019 at the WTO, which is a decision on the integrated database. The integrated database is the official source of tariff and other trade-related information. So the idea through this recommendation and through implementation of the decision is to permit access to reliable, timely, and official information on tariffs and other taxes to be paid upon importation, information which, as we know, is often difficult for SMEs to access. And the last text concerns access to finance and cross-border payments, which are also major obstacles faced by MSMEs. So the group has drafted a declaration in which they advocate for exchanges of good practices to help identify concrete measures that can facilitate access to finance and cross-border payments. And so these texts will be officially endorsed at the next meeting of the group on the 11th of December. And of course, all WTO members are invited to support this package. Next slide, please. In addition to this package, the group is currently working on an online MSME platform that is called Trade for MSMEs, which will be released in early 2021. And it will have two portals, one for MSMEs and the other for policymakers. And it will look to provide a one-stop shop of verified information related to trade. And it will be translated in all three official languages. So for policymakers, for example, it will include relevant MSME-related studies and regulatory practices. For MSMEs, it will include links to free online training tools. It will include links to the Global Trade Help Desk, which I will now present very briefly. Next slide, please. So I briefly referred to the Global Trade Help Desk when I talked about the text of the group on access to information. Next slide, please. And yes, thank you. So the Global Trade Help Desk is a multi-agency initiative that is jointly led by the ITC, the International Trade Center, UNCTAD, and the WTO to simplify market research for companies, and especially MSMEs. So it's an interactive web application with trade and market information such as tariffs, rules of origin, non-tariff measures, etc. And it will be provided in six official UN languages. So this is a portal to allow MSMEs to have all the information they need in order to export or import, a one-stop shop. Next slide, please. I also wanted to say a few words on a statement that some members of the MSME group initiated in May 2020, highlighting the importance of MSMEs in the time of COVID. It was supported or signed by 52 delegations representing around 80 members of the WTO. And this statement calls for careful monitoring of MSME-related developments and for taking further action when necessary to help MSMEs' involvement in international trade and supply chains. It recognizes the importance of digitalization during the pandemic and calls on members to explore solutions to increase MSMEs' access to digital tools. And it calls on members to also regularly update information with the WTO in order to ensure the timely availability of trade-related information for SMEs and COVID-19 related measures. Next slide, please. And so let me finish by noting that the group considers direct communication with the private sector of paramount importance. And I know that there are many SMEs and representatives of small business organizations participating in today's event. So I invite you all to reach out to the group and tell members about your challenges, about what you think the group should be working on to help you and to help small businesses in general. Now, there are three main communication channels between the group and the private sector. The first are workshops or webinars, which are a very good way to bring SME-related topics to the attention of WTO members. The second channel is a newsletter that is published quarterly by the coordination of the SME group. And if you're interested, you can subscribe to it and you have the email there. And the third channel is the WTO SME page on small businesses and trade, which has links to SME-related webinars and information on relevant work for the organization, including research work. And last point that I wanted to make, just next slide, please, is an upcoming webinar that the group organizes for the private sector on the 15th of December, 2020, from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. CET. So for India, it's a bit later, it's like late afternoon. And this webinar will present the package that I very, very briefly presented today. So package of recommendations and declarations, and then there will be a discussion with webinar participants, so with the private sector, on potential topics for future work. And discussions will be focused around several themes, including trade facilitation, access to finance and cross-border payments, digitalization, and then any other topic of interest, of course, to webinar participants can be raised. So you have the Zoom registration link at the bottom of the slide. If you want to attend, you're more than welcome to do so. We'll be happy to have you participate in this event. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ganne, for providing very interesting and very useful information about the, particularly the WTO perspective. You have mentioned one thing, the definition of the MSME sector, rather we can say SME sector in worldwide is not matchable. Rather, 2012, I have suggested the European Commission, the chairperson, I met him, and then again 2014 also the European Council chairman, that why not European countries come together and interact with the worldwide, the region wise. Say like Asian countries different, African is Gulf countries can be European, North America. Why you're not taking initiative again? Because I know the WTO has already done this job, but not succeed. I think so. Why not the this region wise, the MSME or SME definition can be created, like in Asia, one definition. Recently in India, definition has changed. You will surprised to note that 2012 2002, when Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was there, Dr. Seetharaman, for your information, he has attended my program, and when I was giving a welcome address, I said we are a small entrepreneurs. That time we called it a small industries, small sector industries. And I said, why government is keeping a small? Why not making a big? Then he decided that he instructed to the concerned officer and the minister, SSI, to consider the revival of the definition. So they took 6 years to revive that. And after that, in 16 years, government of India took they changed the definition according to the international level. But still, we are not matchable with the international. If we have to marry with any company from the Japan, Korea, European, we feel that we are very tiny micro. So this is one suggestion. So I will ask a question lastly, but I would like to invite Dr. Seetharaman to ask question to you as a banker, because bankers always looking at growth. If you have a growth, if you have a capital, if you have a business, if you have a collateral, and if you have a cash flow, then I will lend. So Dr. Seetharaman, what is your perspective according to the WTO presentation?
It's a wonderful presentation, Emmanuelle, you have done. And in the recent 2 weeks, you have seen RCEP, Regional Cooperation of Economic Summit, has happened again. APEC has taken a major decision on trade and technology. We have G20 conclusion. These are all extraordinary, alignment towards bringing sustainability back on track. Now, you mentioned the original projection was 9% contraction in terms of merchandise trade. How do you see the changing phase of the world in the coming year? We have global economics is also changing from a contraction of 4.4% to 5.2% next year in terms of aggregate growth. How do you see the major shift in trade with all these countries coming together, APEC, G20, RCEP? There should be bigger opportunities. Do you see a transformation in terms of global trade, free trade?
Yeah, can I jump in?
Yep.
Yes. So first on the question of the definition of SMEs, this is very much the elephant in the room. You're right. So there have been extensive discussions on that as to whether there should be a universal definition or not. You're arguing for a regional definition. The reality is that there are many different definitions, not only at the national level. Some countries have several definitions. In China, for example, they don't have the same definition depending on the industrial sector. And we can't even agree among international organizations. I mean, if you look at the definitions of SMEs by different international organizations, they are different. So so WTO members chose a pragmatic approach, realizing the landscape. I mean, what was out there, the complexity of the issue, the fact that you have many different definitions. Some of them are based on the number of employees, some others on the revenue component. And as I said, sometimes several definitions within a country. It was decided to say, look, okay, let's leave it to each government to decide what their SMEs are. And therefore, the measures that will be taken can be applied to their SMEs according to their definition, according to what they think will be the most impactful. The idea is to try and help those who really need it. And it was felt after hours-long discussions that it was better to leave it to each individual government to decide the size of the companies that they thought were meeting the definition of MSMEs, the ones that they really wanted to support. So it was really a pragmatic approach. Now, whether we could reinvigorate that and have discussions at a regional level, maybe. I mean, this is a suggestion that could possibly be made. But the group so far and WTO members have decided to have a really pragmatic approach to try and push solutions and say, okay, well, if we start discussing the definition, it may take forever. Let's move on. Let's look at the issues, the challenges that the SMEs face, and let's try to find solutions. Let's put in place one-stop shops, web portals to help them. Let's develop some recommendations to try and move the needle. Now, on the question of trade, the protection for trade, so the numbers we've revised them several times this year. So the original numbers we issued in April, as I said, there were two scenarios: the optimistic scenario minus 13%, 1.3, the pessimistic minus 32%, and now we are at minus 9.2% because there was a big rebound over the summer. The reality is that we may have to revise the numbers even further because there are still a lot of uncertainties. We're in the middle of a second wave here in Europe. People are already talking about a third wave. How big an economic impact this will have is still very much unknown. And so it's very difficult to know precisely what the impact will be. It will be a minus, that is for sure. Whether it's minus 7 at the end or minus 13 still remains to be seen, but there will be a trade impact. This being said, as I noted, we've seen a rebound over the past few months, and so this is very positive. Actually, the latest numbers are rather encouraging. The goods trade barometer that I showed at 100.7%, it's above the 100. So that's the good news. It means that it's growing again. So I think we are indeed at a point where people are joining forces and try to make things happen. And I'm an optimist by nature, so I want to think that indeed this is going to make a difference, and that we now have an opportunity to really think about key challenges that countries' economies are facing and try to push certain changes through.
Okay. Dr. Alberto, since we are putting efforts for the revival, survival, and transforming the manufacturing industry, recently you have organized very, very interesting and very big event. According to your perspective, now industry is survival mode. Now coming back to the back to future, back to manufacturing sector, they are coming on a track on the revivals. So what is your perspective, and I know you would like to understand from the WTO, particularly the revival and survival for the manufacturing industry. What is your question to her?
That Lombardy, where I live and I work, is one of the so-called four motors of Europe, and Lombardy contributes to the Italian export for 33% and 25% for the manufacturing internal product, Italian internal product. I was in one of the counties where manufacturing is more alive, let's say, and they expect the down peak, of course, the rebound, the registered rebound in September, October, and they expect end of 2021 relatively extraordinary. So not only picking up the same angle of growth, but even at a steeper angle. Is it the same that WTO expects? So an extraordinary season. We told the injection of money, of liquidity.
Yeah. So you're right. Yes, this is also what we expect. What we had in our April forecasts was indeed a very steep rebound afterwards, but that would still not bring us above the level, above the pre-pandemic level. Given that there has been a bigger rebound than expected over the summer, it could well be that the rebound that we see brings us back to pre-pandemic level. So yes, we do see that, and we saw the same thing actually for the 2008-2009 financial crisis, where you had a big drop and then a very steep rebound that brought trade back to not previous trajectory, because it used to grow twice as fast as global GDP, and after the financial crisis, it was more or less at the same level. But nevertheless, it brought it back to a decent level, and so we expect more or less the same scenario here. Yeah. With all the uncertainties that are still surrounding the current situation. So yeah, to be taken with a pinch of salt and to be revisited probably in a few weeks or months.
Okay, Dr. Joshi.
Emmanuelle, first of all, wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. Really exciting to see all the work being done. So that's my first comment to you. I was really impressed, and I'm making that comment for all the audience who are attending today, because I was not aware of this figure that 95% of the global companies are MSMEs. That is, I thought that number would be close. If you had made me bet on it, I would have said 50, 60%. So I'm really impressed with it, and I want all our colleagues who are attending this today, many of them will be MSMEs. I want them to know that this is a global community which is really large and they're part of, and they should be really proud of that. And I think with that number, and I know it varies from country to country, but I think the importance of MSMEs towards world development, trade development is so immense. And then comes to the point that you rightly made, which we all know. I see it every day. Each of you see it, has been the deep, unfortunate impact negatively on these MSMEs. So many of them have closed down. So many of them are in financial trouble. And yes, different countries have come in with different interventions, but still the world situation, the country situation, even in the US, what I see is very sad and unfortunate. And I don't have the right answers to it. All I would say is I'm going to take your words. I'm like you. I get up every morning. I'm an optimist. I just look at the bright side of the world and say, what can we do? And for all of us, all the speakers, distinguished speakers, and all of us, I just believe, and I truly believe this, that if we all work together, we all hold hands, we all take our respective strengths of each of our organizations and work closely and collaborate together, we can make a difference. In a way, what Chandrakantji asked you also, why could this, and it's, I mean, he was talking in general, but he's right. He's talking at an overall level to say, why can governments and organizations not work faster to even change a definition? I would say to you, and that's going to be one of the comments I'll make in my talk later on, is I just believe digitalization, SMEs is all about connectivity. And my challenge to everyone all over the world, everyone on this forum is we're not connected. We talk about digitalization, but not connected in the way we need to. So just that thought that I'm going to leave you with to say there's going to be a huge need for deep intervention, deep support. And I don't mean support in terms of just government giving out additional financials, which is wonderful, which is great. The banking sector can do a lot to support. And I know Dr. Seetharaman and his bank and different institutions are doing a lot. But I think this is going to take much more. And I just leave that message for all SMEs. Let us all gang up together, band together, work with industry, work with the Manufacturing Foundation, work with the SME Chamber to do much more together. So just more of a general comment than a question for you.
Emmanuelle, would you like to say so?
No, just to say that I completely agree with whatever Joshi said about the importance of all working together and all trying to make a difference. I think by joining forces, we'll be stronger, and then we'll be able to better address the challenges that MSMEs are facing. And so likewise, it's critically important for WTO members to hear from SMEs directly what the challenges are and how the group can help, what can be done, what should they focus on. Our doors are open. Please reach out to us. Do participate in the event on the 15th of December. Do share your thoughts because that communication is critical. This is only if we have that we'll be able to address the challenges in the right way. So I completely agree with what was just said.
Okay, thank you very much. As a founder and president of World SME Trade Center and International Business Forum of India, I would like to suggest to you that you can request all the government from the various parts of the world that focus more on the empowerment of SME sector. I know some government are working, but some government has ignored the SME sector. So that is one. Second thing, now that there is a big we can say a threat to new entrepreneurship. Because of this pandemic, new entrepreneurship will not be created. And new entrepreneurship will not create why? Because there will be no funding. There will be no finance, no venture capital, because you don't have a proper cash flow system, a cash flow, your proposal. So therefore, but now coming back to the point that, I suggest you can take this matter, but since Dr. Seetharaman would like to leave at 6:30, so let me bring him, because when we talk about entrepreneurship, business, industry, growth, economy, only thing is that SME can survive only on the finance. The finance is there, SME will grow. SME will grow, the country will grow. Okay. So point is that without finance, without banker support, any company, any country, any government, or any industry or business will not grow. So I'm also eager to hear from Dr. Seetharaman that how your bank, or rather you are a global banker. What is your perspective, particularly to your strategy of your bank, and rather your personal strategy for the empowerment of SME sector and revival? Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chandrakant, Salunkhe, Mr. Viren, Joshi, Mr. Emmanuelle, Ganne, Alberto, Ribolla, honored guest, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow businessmen. It's a pleasure and privilege to be an integral part of this Global SME Summit. What a world, extraordinary world we are going through. Of late, we have the semblance of positivity. We have seen the reflection of clinical solutions, even though we have an impact of over 60 million people, and we lost nearly 1.5 million people. The impact is domino in substance. In terms of economic catastrophe, in terms of social, in terms of human loss, again, environment. These issues are multidimensional, and world at large have realized more than ever we have to come together, stay interconnected, and collaborate. That's what Mr. Viren was also advocating. In substance, that's precisely what we have done. If you look at the last 9 to 10 months, the global community has recognized that fiscal and monetary alignment has to come globally. When we had this financial crisis in 2008, it was confined to only financial sector. Now, what we have seen is extraordinary. This is a paralysis in the whole world. Humanity is endangering its solvency. We are alive today. That itself is a great thing. We lost, well, as I said, more than 1.5 million people of our brethren. So the challenge remains, the world at large has recognized we should stay interconnected, whether you believe in globalization or economic nationalization. You have to bring in a sustainable value creation, and that's precisely the reason 30 trillion has been pumped in global terms. 30 trillion has been pumped so far. And predominantly, the value chain was created to have a remedial management and disaster recovery for SME. Emmanuelle was showcasing the importance of liquidity. The liquidity crisis has not moved into a solvency and sovereign issue today, purely because multi-trillion has been pumped. Every single government in this part of the world, 196 countries got together. And again, the recent G20 was a great assertion of the fact that fiscal and monetary alignment has worked. They want to make sure we move from remedial management to sustainable growth. Disaster is apart. We have come out of the disaster. The damage is done. Now, the second wave or third wave will have consequential impact, but we know we have mapped it to a large extent. Once the clinical solution is administered, we will be in a position to make sure we can reduce the mortality. That much we are clear. That's why, if you look at the IMF prediction, next year it is going to move to 5.2% aggregate terms economic growth. And similar reflection we are seeing on the trade side, where the trade or investment, banking is an intermediary to the frame. Unless the global economics improves, we cannot sustain the world. How do you eradicate extreme poverty if you don't have growth momentum? How do you make sure environment sustainability comes in if there is a global warming and climate change is not fixed, or food security is not fixed? There's no way you can fix it. So poverty alleviation is a major factor. Again, this crisis is a major revelation for us to understand. This is an opportunity to govern ourselves with absolute trust and transparency. That's why digital governance is going to be, more than ever, it is going to be emphasized. The acceleration, the speed at which digital governance is impacting is extraordinary. I could see it in the banking side. The transaction-based processing hitherto was, at least in a majority of the portion in many parts of the world, was manual. Now it's all shifting to digital advantage. The customers see the value in it. He was forced to do it. It came as a blessing in disguise. mind you, this is a bigger opportunity for us to kill the parallel economy, bring in more measurements to see governance comes in, trust and transparency comes in, anti-money laundering takes a measured approach. We will combat financing terrorism. It's a need of the hour. The evil act should be controlled, and we have a mechanism now. If everything is connected digitally, trust and transparency comes in, online real time you are able to measure and manage, then you are in a better position to create a social justice, a freedom, functional democracy, human empowerment, human dignity. And that's what precisely this crisis has brought in. Let's not look at the negative side of it. A lot of positive values are coming out of this crisis. This crisis is going to create human values more than ever, much more dignified. We are seeing it. We are seeing it. We stay connected with more and more passion and love. We started recognizing it is not haves and have-nots. We have to reduce the income inequality. That's why, even in terms of business, when Emmanuelle presented 96% of the business, that's huge. And 60% of the working force. Imagine the gap even today in terms of rich and poor. We need to eliminate this. We need to bring in a sense of parity to humanity. And this crisis is an enabler. That's how we have to interpret. So that when a Millennium Development Goal was redesigned as Sustainable Development Goal, we didn't accomplish as much as we wanted. That's why, if you look at the enduring values which are in the offering, we have taken steps now. In the last 1 month, if you look at the global governance, you look at 22nd and 23rd, we had G20. Look at their agenda. It's all humanitarian drive. Trade was there, technology was there. I'm not disputing it. The digital governance was emphasized. But more of humanity. They want to give the vaccine to poor countries. That's the first spell. Look at the change in attitude. Look at the BRIC meeting which happened 15 days before. Look at the APEC. Look at 14 countries come together, including Northeast Asia. Japan and China is coming together. If you don't stay interconnected, interdependent, you are not going to create a better world, better citizenship to this world. The peace is within us. We fragmented it. We created conflicts between the developing world and developed world. Contentious issues, even today in WTO, we are seeing it. So we need to bridge this gap, and this crisis is an opportunity to fix it. SME is inclusive. Financial inclusion is a model which we have learned. You have to necessarily make sure wealth distribution comes in tandem. And that's where the prosperity I'm looking at with cautious optimism. When it comes to global warming and climate change, again, it's a positive trend. Carbon emission, we are talking about carbon neutrality, carbon-free world. Environment is factored now into the trade. Madam will agree. More than ever, the global leaders are recognizing that we have to factor a green mission, green banking. Investments are lending, a portion of the risk-weighted capital has to be allocated. Otherwise, you don't create a sustainability. If 27% of the global carbon emission come from the world richest country, biggest country in terms of economics, America, rather China is second richest. And again, emerging markets like India is having 7% of the carbon emission. Now the energy mix is changing now. These are initiatives coming up. Of course, there were steps taken right from COP15 to as on date, Paris climate. But more than ever, now we see the interconnectivity. How do we change the energy mix from the fossil fuels? How do we create lesser carbon emission? At the same time, we have to reinvigorate industrial infrastructure, reinvigorate energy into the systems to make sure you create through diverse sources. And that's the positive reflection. Now, in the midst, you have to develop business. The business has to be developed in five-fold strategy. What are they? irrespective of the industry where you come from, you have to understand, you have to do the remedial management to stay. As more than ever, you have to understand, you have to fix the damage which has happened. Take stock of it first. How much supply chain you lost? How much bankruptcy must have happened? How much innovation has to take place? Remodeling of your business. It's no more same old fashion. Now we are conversing in virtual world, right from America to India to Doha to Switzerland to Italy. This itself shows clear connectivity. This is the way we are going to have a knowledge management. This is the way we are going to bring in knowledge economy. So you have remodeling of your business, every business. If you don't innovate, you are dead. You're finished, over. Because the way we do the business has to change. The policies, the procedures, the process. SME has to take that step, initiative. You have to come to terms. World over, everyone is now promoting. In the last 8-9 months, I've been seeing not only incubation is happening, digital acceleration is happening for SMEs. I have seen in the Gulf, whether Dubai or Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, or even Qatar, where I have business, how many fintech companies have cropped up here. I was just telling Viren, this is the time to come to the Gulf. Why you have to come to the Gulf? Because so much money is flowing where you have investable surplus, and they all are understood. SME is the backbone. 21st century belongs to SME. Let's understand this. There are numbers given by WTO now, but we also know, places like Qatar, I just looked at the total number of business registered in Qatar of late, 25,000 institutions. 96% is SMEs. 96. Now, what the Qatar government has done, I will give you an example. Every government has done, I will give you a classic example where they put the money. First is to make sure SMEs are not closing and running away. Even though it's only 15% of the GDP as on date. You have oil, gas, and petrochemicals. You have investable surplus across the globe. Our GDP is nearing 200 billion. This year there is a contraction of 4.5%, but still it's formidable. Twice of the GDP we have reserves in terms of sovereign funds invested in multiple market, multiple sectors. Nevertheless, SME was focused through National Response Guarantee Program. First, we will pay the salaries for all. Government has paid the salaries for all. We don't want them to run away and close their business and go. We will pay the rent for all affected sectors, other than the government, private sector side. The banks have been pumped money. Give them 3-year period, 1-year grace period, reduce the interest, give them at cost. It's a peanut price. Government has subsidized. So it's not I'm losing, I'm passing on the benefits, what has come to me as a freebie. Government has allocated 15 billion interest-free to fund for all these institutions. So the minute you have protection of small and medium-sized entrepreneurship, your job security is there. Employment protection is there. And they made sure the wage is paid instantaneously for all the blue collars. It depends on the demographic dynamics in each country. So essentially, you have to protect the overall opportunity to retain, sustain, let them live alone. Let us revive the business thereafter. So it's important you remodel the business and protect the SME, and then start innovating and giving solutions to you. Not only financial access. Now, debt is coming from the financial institutions. We have signed, all the commercial banks like me with the government, sign the equity. If you have a know-how, there is a transfer of a technology, the know-how is there, then the government is ready to give you the capital. Debt will come from all the commercial banks, for which it's a joint risk participation. I am guaranteed 85% of my risk. It means even if the customer goes bad, I will be guaranteed 85%. Why should I not take that measured risk? So government is recognizing It's not only here, in the region itself. I can give enough examples. Because SME is the backbone. It is, how do you create for younger population jobs? You have to keep occupying them, otherwise there will be social unrest. Peace and prosperity comes out of occupancy. So you need full employment. Countries which are richer has to reduce the income inequality. And again, the more you create innovation and knowledge economy, you have to make sure individual becomes institutions. That's where the entrepreneurship comes in. Social entrepreneurship comes in. That's for more of financial stability, more of country's prosperity with a long-term vision. That's precisely has happened. Now, bank side, we can give you loan or overdraft or bill discounting or bill purchase or fund, non-funded business, LCs or guarantees or acceptances, we can give. But you also need to be supported in terms of your consultancy, mentoring. That is also set up now. There's a separate SME mentoring program. Business incubation programs have been set up by the government authorities. Now we have seen many institutions are taking advantage. There's an SME toolkit. A regular training and development is given. We have to do it. Every country has to do it. Every country who aspire for gross welfare to the mass has to look at business stemming towards social entrepreneurship. And that is precisely the opportunity we have to look at it. If you start dimensioning your objectives clearly, the challenges can be mapped. The challenges are very many. Everyone has faced the problem across the globe. If 96% of the business is impacted, it's not some technology companies or Amazon or Google or Microsoft making more money. That's not what we are talking about. We need small and medium-sized entrepreneurs to survive, whether it's developed world or developing world. That's why America is now creating, under a new administration, SME fund. Immediately, we want to accelerate the survival. Those business which needs injection of funds. Every country has to remodel in terms of support to the SMEs. Now, when it comes to SME, you have to understand, you have to restructure your debts. You have to take stock of what are your commitment to the market. How do you restructure it? You have to work with the government. You have to work with the banks, apex institutions to make sure how do you have a debt servicing east. Come to us. We will tell you how to do it. Now, if you are sitting anywhere in the world, explore the free zones. Countries like Qatar, for example, have 3 free zones. Now, the free zones, they have pumped additional 3 billion. It means you can come here, set up here, and you can have a commercial gateway for the world. It is available in the rest of the Gulf states as well, Dubai. But underlying economic fundamentals are equally important. It's not that you will come here without indigenous opportunities. You need to have a setup where there is economic momentum. So go to a country where there is a growth and set up the infrastructure, leverage on the free zones, leverage on the business incubators, take the equity available to you, take the debt available to you at a concessional interest, take the tax advantage you have, and make sure you remodel your business and then create a global gateway. Because your business model has to be totally global, irrespective of where you come from, whether you are in India, whether in the United States. Now, the circular economy is becoming flat. We can create Silicon Valley in India. You don't need to go to San Jose or Palo Alto. You are not location-centric, you are information-centric. So wherever you are, SME business community, explore the possibilities around the world because your model is no more local, it is global. Your mindset has to be global. Your digital governance has to come in. You map all your deficiencies. Let us map it one by one. How do we fix it? Access to technology you need. There are infrastructure provision given for concessional advantage. There are countries who want to be competitive enough to make sure their local business is fueled by value advantage of SME. Because everyone recognizes now it is not big corporation alone can stimulate economic momentum in a sustainable fashion. So you need to articulate SME solutions more and more. So you should be proud of having an SME. You should be exploring the market to mitigate the challenges. And there are enough reasons to believe, if you explore in the web itself, each country has contributed in terms of, support systems for SME. Explore it, come to the market where your business model will have value advantage. Create a gateway location, whichever is your industry type, doesn't matter. Economic momentum has to be revisited in tandem because everything is getting rationalized. You don't need to run with the same amount of people. With the value advantage which you envision, your cost of production will change. If you are getting cost-effective labor from India, for example, if your cost of capital is cheaper, if your cost of financing is cheaper, you have proximity, you have first-class seaport, you have first-class airport. Why should you struggle in a place where you don't have? Keep your office, keep your liaison, change your location. Change your location where you have a value advantage. Why not? We live in interconnected. Reach out any part of the world, and you are going to have a right kind of input. That's what precisely I want to give a message today. Revival and survival is not our only objective. We need to accelerate our performance. We need to create a better world from this crisis. After 1930 depression, the world at large has increased its productivity for n number of years. And that is what precisely the opportunity, the acceleration we are going to see with the demographic dividend. Some countries like India has got huge opportunity for us to really find. Today, every individual is becoming institutions, and knowledge is a real power. It is not the financial capital alone. It's a human capital which is going to drive. There could be no more unemployment if you understand the world at large is still in need of multiple solutions to bring in peace and prosperity. And that's what our commitment should be. We are global citizens. We understand the dynamics of interconnected world, and we will bring in values which are ever streaming for us to create a sustainable value chain for your business and the prosperity of human endeavors. And that is precisely you can do as SME entrepreneurs. We are here to support your mission wherever you are, whichever be the part of the world you are engaged in. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Seetharaman. Very interesting, very straight message you had given that, during this pandemic, redesign, replan, rethink about your business. Diversify your business, reform your business, transform your business if you want to survive. This is a very good message for the SME sector, not only for the India, but particularly global, because I found that many entrepreneurs are now thinking redevelopment of their business, rechanging of the business, and there's so many things happening. So this is very interesting. I would like to bring Dr. Ribolla, since you are in from the manufacturing and since you are in a working with the various institutions, I request you to kindly, give your comments and any question to Dr. Seetharaman. Dr. Ribolla? Yes. Can you unmute, please? Yes.
Sure, because the line is bad, quite bad. So I think I understood your question. First of all, I underline what Dr. Seetharaman has said all over his speech, that there's no comeback. It's not that today the pandemic is over and we are going back to our normal life. Our life has been changed. As an entrepreneur, as an employee, has changed forever. This said, in my opinion, we are creating, in Europe, we have the recovery fund, 750 billion euro. We are creating a pond where the horse can satisfy his thirst. But the problem is that we have the horse that has to arrive to the pond. So we have to supply companies with financial energies to arrive at the pond. So the money will be injected in the system in future, not tomorrow morning. In Europe, we are talking about 750 billion euro, which is a lot of money. But all this said, only in Italy, we have private savings that amount to over 3,000 billion. In Germany, proportionally, 60 million people, 86 million people, they have the same, let's say, problem. So the question to Dr. Seetharaman is, how, provided that the government are making a lot of effort, and in my opinion, the efforts are going to be in the long term, not in the short term, and may not be enough, or maybe not covering everything. So how can we deploy the incredible amount of wealth that the single families have in their safe? So how can we help people investing in small, medium businesses, guaranteeing their investment?
Good question, see. And that's precisely, happening now. If you look at the some of the locations where there is a social unrest, people have recognized the policy objectives is to promote gross welfare. So some of the countries are already changing the framework in terms of taxation, in terms of incentives. So that's where now Gulf states, if you look at the big companies versus small companies, it used to be 2%, 3% small and medium-sized entrepreneurs productivity. It is now moving 15, 20, 30. In a place like UAE, it is much more, 60%. Now, every country is now concentrating on encouraging entrepreneurship, which I mentioned, and they're incentivizing in multiple forms. For example, if you're coming in from Italy, I have 3 industrial estates here. We have oil, gas, and petrochemicals, plus we have reasons to believe Gulf states like Qatar has to engage in food security, so manufacturing of food and products. And again, industrial products, we have reasons to believe we have a first-class seaport. We used to have transshipment through Dubai. Now our own port is there, state of the art. We have a concession value advantage. As I said earlier, the free zone is available. Instead of manufacturing in one location, explore the options in this part of the world as well and make it cost effective. And then your distribution becomes more meaningful, competitive. So you have to revisit your existing cost sheet and then come to a conclusion how exactly you will identify your value stream within the different market definition. Now, how the governments are doing in many parts of the world, they are creating SME acceleration. They are creating incubation centers. They are creating social entrepreneurship as a culture. They are creating a knowledge economy so that you don't play on ignorance. The more you disseminate knowledge, the more you become transparent in terms of policies and procedures and deliberate issues and reach a consensus, you will have values which will stem for reduction of income inequality, because the policies will influence such change. And that's what exactly should happen. Many countries now have recognized no more you can, create a division between haves and have-nots. So they are taxing the rich people. They are incentivizing the poor people. They are taxing the big corporates relatively in proportional term. When it comes to small and medium size, they give the tax holidays. They give cost of financing cheaper. So these are some of the rituals they have tried, and it is working now. All that you need to do is to be more business competitive. You have a WTO ranking, World Economic Forum ranking. If you see in the last 5 years or even 10 years, I can say how the Middle Eastern countries have changed, especially the Gulf states have changed in terms of offering incentives. Because it is not that they are doing a favor. It is a win-win model. for sustainable development. Otherwise, big corporations with GDP confined only to oil and gas was there. Today, if you look at the GDP split, its non-oil growth is more than the GDP growth, oil growth. So there are initiatives taken by this government, and where I can be specific, if you have any industries coming from Italy, whether there is a scope for you to set it up, and why you should set it up here, how you can integrate the market, how you can have a supply chain connected, how you can distribute your production or manufacturing output, I can suggest you.
Virenji.
Alberto?
Virenji can come in.
Sure. So again, Dr. Seetharaman, my compliments, wonderful speech, really exciting. I mean, I think I consider myself an optimist. I was telling Emmanuelle also that she said she's an optimist, but I think I need to put you in a different atmosphere altogether, a super optimist. And I mean that as a compliment. I do believe that the comments you made are relevant to each one of us individually, each SME, the focus on human capital, on humanity. I think these are endearing values, as you rightly said. And I think each of us need to take this to heart. In the end, a business is all about people and heart. So I think if we can club that together, we can make a big difference in the world. And everything that you said reminds me of a statement that actually a working principle that I had in a previous company with a US corporation. And it's a very simple phrase, but I'll just read it. I'll just tell you again. If it is to be, it is up to me. In short, if we want to do anything, is each of us that need to make it happen. We need to connect with one another. And I think that exactly was your message to everybody. And again, to all the SMEs on this in this conference today, I think the message that you gave, rightly so, was, among others, was remodel yourself, think globally, think Middle East. Since I've been in the Middle East, I know the strength of the Middle East, using the advantage of the free trade zones and all the benefits that can come in terms of strong financing and all the benefits you said. I think Indian SMEs, global SMEs, as you said, from Italy also, anywhere in the world, I think we should all become more connected and use that benefit for our individual companies, for the community around us, and for humanity. So I think that's the message I would take and I would convey to everybody. But again, I'd like to compliment you for a very exciting dialogue today.
Thank you. Dr. Seetharaman, your speech, your suggestions, your thoughts are very, very useful for particularly not only SME sector, but usually I found that you, as a global speaker, you always give a very, very good directions, best directions. Now coming back to the point is that currently so many bankers are reluctant to invest in SME sector, particularly in India. If you look at India, European countries, even some of the Asian countries, they are not considering the proposal from the SME sector for last 6 months. What is your observation and your suggestion for them?
Thank you, Mr. Salunkhe. It's a very valid point you raised. It was the case, because SMEs are generally unsecured. Their financial disciplines are limited. Their bookkeeping even is limited. The technology support is limited. But that has changed. I mean, in fact, I have multi-billions I've given. I was the first one. You came in 2011 to Doha. 2006, we took the initiative only to, SME is a good business. This is what exactly I'm trying to advocate. Because it's going to give you a changing face of the market, a full insight. And it's a market pulse, and you have to nurture them. And you have to it's a public-private partnership. Governments have to realize this is a public-private partnership. It is not a private businessman. Overnight, he can come out of his problem. He is experimenting. You have to respect his innovation, entrepreneurship, and you have to handhold him. And that's what precisely happening during this COVID. Governments who are wise enough have realized this. Take, for example, even in India now, the first of an Atmanirbhar program, the second economic policy which Kamath Committee has announced is full of verdicts which are promoting SME. Now, SMEs should not underestimate their capacity. They have to keep hanging around because it's important that patience and perseverance is required for SME management. You know it. They have to set good discipline. Whatever be the short-term liquidity issue or whatever be the short-term challenges in terms of supply chain or even in the customer profile. Today's world, interconnected world, interdependent world, if you collaborate, as Mr. Viren has just rightly summed it up, you can. If the market access is global, why are you worried about? Market access is global. You go to a place, you don't need to be location-centric. You can still, for example, Indian entrepreneurs, if they want to bring in their cost-effective labor, if you want to set it up here in the free zone, what prevents them from doing it? It is cheaper. I mean, I'm not saying you relocate. Or instead of San Francisco, you come to India. What prevents you from doing it? People have understood that it's a game change. Now, government have recognized, many governments have recognized. If you look at the policy pronouncement in the last 8-9 months, they're all leading towards SME, not big corporates. Public sector is completely excluded. Private sector, affected sectors, they want to make sure that if these companies are going bust, then what will be the economics value chain in terms of sustainability? You will have more unemployment, more problems. So it's better to invest on them. This is what every government should think. And that is what prudent governments are doing. And the policies which are coming up, if you look at, that's why I mentioned in the beginning, G20 or even RCEP, they all have come to a common conclusion. It is reducing the income inequality. Even big corporates now, like JP Morgan, they say they will allocate a multi-billion fund to support reducing the income inequality. Where they will fund it? You have to fund the entrepreneurship. You have to fund a small, even if you have to make a loss initially with small and medium-sized entrepreneurs, you have to give them business. End of the day, you will, if you look at the full cycle, for me, SME is not a loss. I have now 3 branches, Mumbai, Chennai, and Kochi. I don't have, except one case, I'm giving you the actual number, except one case. I have taken him to court, unfortunately. The rest of the cases, I didn't have bad books. We worked with them. We said when the proposal comes, we say, listen, this is not going to work. You rework the cash flows. You look at the market. Where are you? What are you going to do? See, you have to be a consultant, advisory with him, handhold him, and make sure you take the valid proposal and educate him and get it right in the first time. That's what we should not jump to conclusion. That's what we need to use the word public-private partnership. Government has to support, and even banks have to support them. And there is no point in keeping the money in the central bank. You have to distribute and make sure you thrive on business. And those policy changes, it's coming up. And India has taken right initiatives, as I see it in the package too.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Rather, I will pray to God that the energetic person, energetic global banker, energetic mentor should get all the banks. I'm not going to use positive word because it is COVID-19 positive word is not good. So I will use the energetic person, a good mentor. So thank you very much, Dr. Seetharaman. Now I would like to invite Dr. Alberto Ribolla to share his thought, because ladies and gentlemen, we have heard that WTO, who is working with the government as a government perspective, what she has presented her the scenario and research and development. We heard the banker. The banker is a playing a main role. Rather, he is a real fuel of the any business community. Now we are to hear from the Dr. Ribolla. what is his efforts for the bringing together all the stakeholders to improve the manufacturing industry? And currently we know that we are in a difficult situation now, but most of the companies now looking at the fourth industrial revolution, how we are going to match the struggling to fourth industrial revolution. Floor is open for you.
Thank you very much. My regards to all the distinguished guests, the speakers, and thank you to SME Chamber of India for this invitation. And I have to say that recently we had the honor to have the SME Chamber of India as one of our institutional partners. Just a few seconds to say who I am, who I do represent. I am an entrepreneur by job, let's say, and our foundation, that is a startup founded in May 2018, brings together different forces. First of all, the Association of the Manufacturing Entrepreneurs of Lombardy. Lombardy has an internal GDP of 335 billion euro. I was saying before that it is considered one of the four engines, the four motors, the four tigers of Europe. And the entrepreneurial association called Confindustria Lombardia represents 13,000 companies for over 750,000 employees. And Lombardy contributes 1/3 of Italian export and 25% of the manufacturing GDP. The second partner of our foundation is the Politecnico of Milano, the capital of Regione Lombardia, and the third is Intelligent Manufacturing System from the United States, which is similar to our foundation with the same goals. And we have been supported from the early beginning by governments at different levels. First of all, the Regione Lombardia, our own regional government, by the European Commission from the early beginning, and also we have a partnership with UNIDO, the United Nations International Development Organization. So we have, let's say, we can confront ourselves at regional level, at European level, and at global level. If you can start with my slideshow, please, if it is possible.
Yes, thank you. He dakona presentation.
So in last March, in the first wave, in the middle of the first wave of the COVID, we were thinking how to go ahead with the mission of the foundation that is to generate and distribute industrial culture. So to make people understand that without industry, without manufacturing, their lives are much harder. So in doing that, we came up with what we titled as a Back to the Future project. So what was the contribution we could give in terms of ideas to all our stakeholders at global level to return back to our normal life that had been disrupted by the pandemic. Conscious of the fact that many organizations were contributing with white papers, of course, bigger than ourselves, the consultancy houses, financial institutions, etc. But we were convinced that we were quite unique, let's say, on the market because we are a perfect triple helix foundation. So we have inside entrepreneurs, enterprises, we have inside governments, and we have inside academia. So on that assumption, we launched the project. And we assembled more than 160 experts from all over the world, from 35 nationalities, 40% of them women, so almost perfectly balanced in terms of gender, and distributed in 13 different groups. So each group of 10, 12 people had a specific topic, and all the different topics were grouped around, we call the game of the words beginning with P, for topics beginning with a word with P: people, privacy, policy, productivity, and preparedness. So all these 160 people, the experts from industry, academia, governments, NGO, different things from different angles, from different perspectives, came up with the white paper that you can download from our website. What is the philosophy of our white paper? That always after a tragedy like the one we are going through in this month, has always come a wave of new progress. We have made an example of the plague back in the Middle Age, and after the plague, we had the end of serfdom. For example, after the Second World War, we had the inclusion of women in the business activity. So after every tragedy that the human mankind had to face, we had the possibility to came up with a new perspective, a better way of our living in the long term. So we have called it Back to the Future, the project. So how we could return back to the possibility to not only go back to our lives, but to improve our business. And business means also social, a good society, and the possibility to have a better environment. So first you produce wealth, and then you have a social increase of your standards, generally speaking. So in terms of what our findings is, the impact on we had on people was that the COVID pandemic has accelerated, for example, with the smart working, what I was saying before, nothing is going to be as before. So we all approach a different way of working. And that different way of working is not only connected to the single employee, but to the whole company, including the employer. The pandemic has increased also the importance of certain types of skills. So has accelerated the transition towards digitalization, and of course has also had some back kicks. For example, women are suffering more in terms of temporary employment from this crisis, and the crisis also induced all of us, has convinced us that we have to be more inclusive in terms of the strategy within a company, for example. So we need more, we have to be more open as employers with the employees in terms of strategy and the ideas that can come up with including all the chain of the decision making within the company. In terms of policies, of course, policy should be concentrated in building resilient global value chains that have been disrupted by the pandemic, that SME, like women, SME are the companies that suffer more from this crisis, so this has to be taken into consideration. And last, not only governmental and central government policies are to be taken into account, but also specific regional policies may have a much greater effect on redevelopment of our economies. In terms of what we call preparedness, the pandemic has accelerated the demand for digital experience. Also, in this case, we have noticed that the more advanced companies that normally are the larger ones are suffer less. So the pandemic has convinced all of us that we have to digitalize more and more our business. That new approaches have to be taken toward the supply chains, also because governments are supporting so much their economy. We have two problems. One of the logistics, so the impossibility in some cases to have, for example, the feedstock or the raw materials from that they used to buy them from, and at the same time there are new companies, new enterprises that are going to supply the same goods within our own economy. So that is disrupting totally our way of conducting business in terms of supply chain. And of course, the manufacturing cluster are of paramount importance. So the capability to put together different kind in terms of dimension enterprises, large, medium, small, and research centers, universities, that is a winning factor in the new approach the companies should have. In terms of productivities, the companies that have a higher level of digitalization responded better to the crisis. The technologies 4.0 are proved to be very valuable in being resilient to this crisis. And at last, companies must seriously consider digitalization not only as an option, but as a must. So these are the main outputs that were given by this white paper. We want to continue in future with this project because it was very successful. The white paper, I have to say, I'm very satisfied because it's a very high level. And so we want to continue with the new title of our project that we have named The New Normal, an Extraordinary Season. So what's going to be a new normal? It's like what happened, for example, in Europe after the Second World War. So there will be so many resources available and so many energies unleashed that can generate a better economy, a better economical environment, so a better society. And we call it the new normal, an extraordinary season. And probably we're going to add topics to the 4-1 I just described. So continue with our game.
Dr. Ribolla, can you refix your internet and come back? Meanwhile, let me invite Viren Joshi to speak.
Thank you, Chandrakant. Appreciate this opportunity to talk to everyone. I'd like to thank the SME Chamber of India. I'd like to compliment and thank all the speakers. I think those were really interesting topics, and I'm sure when Dr. Alberto comes back, what he was talking about was really interesting and relevant to all the SME members across the world. I'd also like to take this opportunity. I've attended so many conferences of the SME, and I feel that I've missed out doing something. So with an apology, but I want to thank all my colleagues of the SME Chamber. They do an outstanding job of organizing the conference and making it work so well. So again, a big thank you from my side, from everybody's side, towards all our colleagues in the SME Chamber of India for the great work that they do. It's really wonderful what we put together. And today, I want to talk about digitalization and SMEs. So I'm going to take a very small, narrow topic. Again, each of the speakers mentioned it, talked about it. Dr. Alberto was starting to say that that's one of the most important factors, digitalization. So for me, it's transforming SMEs, India and globally is the topic and the thought process. And I'm bundling it into two bundles. The digital factory, which in my mind is a mix of connectivity and convergence. And the second bucket, the second bundle is global partnership. And in global partnership, I'm talking about SME partnering. And additionally, I'm going to talk about something new, which is the global digital cookbook, a cookbook which will talk about how do we implement digitalization. So First with the digital factory, which is all about digitalization, as all the speakers, the distinguished speakers mentioned earlier, everyone recognizes that this was an important factor in Industry 4.0, the industry revolution. As everybody agrees, with COVID, this became an even more imperative, stronger imperative to go ahead and digitalize. And we're seeing that. I'm seeing it in my own industry, in my own company. So I believe that that's going to be important. And the focus on connectivity with Industry 4.0, IoT, additive manufacturing, automation, robotics are going to be really important factors as part of this whole digital factory. Another one is going to be the convergence of technologies like AR, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and combining that with big data analytics. These are going to be areas which are going to define and revive manufacturing SMEs via the digital factory. Just to give you some perspective, I mentioned this in an earlier conference a few days ago, where the World Economic Forum has focused on 54 odd manufacturing sites. They've done an experiment where they focus on global manufacturing companies who are focused on digitalization. They call them lighthouses. Now, these 54 locations across the world are with reputed companies like Renault, like Schneider Electric, Sandvik, Unilever, Tata Steel, and many others, and Shunshei of China. And they are pioneering a lot of work in digitalization and the digital factory. As a subset, in Shunshei Digital, which is part of Alibaba recently, about in the last 1 week, announced that they have been carrying out a highly secret program for putting together the most automated, digitalized factory in the world. They unveiled it. I've got videos now of it, and I'm going to share that in future, and not today, but I'm trying to pick up more information on it. But what I've learned from it is it's the most advanced factory in the world, combining the best of digitalization. In this particular case, it's for garments, apparel in Shunshei Digital. And Alibaba's plan is to roll this out across China. They want to introduce this automated, digitalized factory across all of China. Now, that's an opportunity. That's also an area of competitiveness that all of us need to be aware of. And we might have to up our own game to be equally competitive and competent. So that brings me to the topic of partnership, global partnership, and how do we all connect? So I'm just going to leave with all the distinguished guests on who have got so much of connectivity. I would say to you, we need to work to connect all the SMEs globally, in India, in Italy, worldwide, to work closer together. There's much more closer connectivity required. Sharing of global manufacturing practices compared to what we do today are requirements which are going to be important. I also would like to say that there is a need for a standard roadmap. Just imagine any one of us as an SME in manufacturing, is which I keep focusing on, but my comments are equally important to SMEs in the service industry, which is equally important. And I would say to each of you, if I come to you and say, okay, let's implement a digital business or a digital factory, I checked up. I this morning talked to people worldwide. I reached out to a lot of friends worldwide, and I'd like to hear afterwards Dr. Alberto's comments on it. But there is no standard cookbook, no standard way in which we can implement this digitalization. Yes, it's new. Yes, there are many technologies, but there is no standard way in which we can implement it. And to my mind, that's a major gap. So I think that's the first thing I would suggest to everybody. How do we all make sure that we put together a standard operating system which can digitalize businesses is one of the biggest things that I think is an opportunity and is the need of the day. it'll make execution faster, it'll make it more efficient, it'll create a connected digital factory across the globe. And that's on the positive side of it. The negative side of it is if we don't arrange this connection, if we don't connect SMEs digitally and make them all work together, if it's not done, we are going to create a digital black hole. And as you know, what's in a black hole doesn't come out of a black hole. So we risk a dysfunctional digital factory if we don't connect. And I believe if this disconnection takes place, it's going to be a serious lapse in terms of really enhancing what Dr. Seetharaman rightly said, improving humanity, improving economy, improving each SME. So I leave you with the thought that there's a need for connectivity, need for convergence for us all to grow and develop as SMEs, as a country, as a globe, as association. So I think with that is my message and mission for today. I'm going to work on it along with SME Chamber to see what we can do to bring in, again, I'll just call it the cookbook, the digital cookbook, to make sure that there's a standard operating procedure of sorts which makes it easier for SMEs to implement digital business, digital factory. With that, I'll hand it back to you, Chandrakant. Thank you for this opportunity.
We will have a open discussion later on. Meanwhile, I would like to again invite Dr. Alberto to continue his talk.
I would say what I'm saying is that we came up this year with. I hope you could follow my presentation of the white paper that I underline that is public, and if you go to our website worldmanufacturing.org, you can download it and go through it. It is, in my opinion, a high level white paper. Thanks to the people that have contributed to it, and we don't want to stop the exercise because activity, what Dr. Joshi was saying before, is of paramount importance. We want to enlarge a number of topics, continuing with the game of the words beginning with P. So we would like to deal with planet, the Green New Deal, and what it's going to represent in terms of social well-being and also the capacity to generate new business, and pupils. So how we can better improve the tuition of the boys and the girls coming out from high school or from the universities. As of today, for example, in Italy, we are missing 20,000 new qualified technicians from high school each year. And then, of course, the capability to design supporting measures to include as much as we can young people in the manufacturing sector. So to support knowing that for each job created in this sector, we generate from 2 to 3 in services. So we would like to have an idea, a discussion with our stakeholders from government, what could be the measures to sustain the young people that want to start their own business. Also, of course, including the financial aspect. And so we are going to come up with this white paper at the end October next year, and we're going to present it at our new World Manufacturing Forum that we're going to organize in mid-October 2021. That will deal with this topic, the new normal. An extraordinary season, so a season where a lot of energies, financial, but not only, will make our world better. The period is the same as after the World War II, with the difference that it is global. It's not continental anymore, and So we're going to present the paper in Chernobyl. And I invite all of you to take part in this event. This year, the event was in November. We had 3,500 people from 50% of them from all over the world, so outside Italy. So if you can help in terms of your contribution to the topics as an expert, and if you want to be present next year, of course, you will be our guest and you will carry out practically the connectivity that Dr. Joshi was hinting at. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rather, the efforts taken by the World Manufacturing Foundation is very appreciated and very appreciable. And second thing, what the thoughts when I attended your event, and that time I realized this is a very, very interesting and very useful for the industry perspective, especially for the SME. Dr. Ribolla, the point is, since the fourth industrial revolution is on the verge, and particularly the SME sector is not ready, particularly from the India perspective or other world perspective, because there is a two system, one developed country as in a developing countries. Similarly, in SME sector, SMEs are developed and some SMEs are underdeveloped, or some SMEs are going to develop. So how you are looking at, particularly the transformation or, the development perspective, because most of the SMEs are not dependent on the development or research. They are doing rather, reverse engineering. I observe that many SMEs are doing reverse engineering. So what is your suggestion and message to the SME sector, particularly at this pandemic?
What we found is a cultural revolution. Ideas and approaches before needing money and policies. In particular for small medium enterprises. As I was saying before, the fragile groups, women, young people, SMEs have been the most affected by the pandemic. In order to return back to a kind of normality or a new way to development, the only thing that I can suggest is to the entrepreneur that has to change the approach. In most cases, the financial support we can give to SMEs are not possible because sometimes SMEs do not want to open to new ideas of governing their business. So there's no comeback. We will change is not an option. It's mandatory. It's going to be an obligation. And so we have to work on the culture of the people, or the culture of the entrepreneurs, and to convince them. So to work on their psychology, to convince them that it is possible to help them, provided that they want to help themselves, provided that they want to change approach, provided that they want to share the leadership with some management, provided that they want to have a new partner, provided that they want to merge with a competitor. So all these things, they need to trust. For example, artificial intelligence, we noticed that one of the, probably the fiercest obstacle is psychology. So people do not trust yet artificial intelligence. So, for example, would you be available as a citizen to go on a car automatically driven? Most of my friends are saying, no, ever. So that is psychology. You don't trust technology. So going back to the small medium enterprises, we have to work on their approach, on their mind. Approach first, and then policies, and then finance, and then whatever can help them to develop their business.
Okay. As you said that we should not depend on the, keep faith on the technology. So we have observed that your network is also not working properly. So sometimes it give the, disturbance in between communication. So this is lighter way, but I would like to bring Mr. Viren Joshi ji. Since you are dealing with a lot of suppliers, a lot of buyers, inventors, and also you are working with a lot of service providers. What is your observation for last 7 to 8 months that global suppliers versus Indian suppliers, global buyers versus Indian buyers? What is your perspective?
Good question, Chandrakantji. My observation is again what the distinguished speakers mentioned. There is a revival of sorts across the world. First of all, in business development, economic development, trade, especially coming out of China. The Chinese manufacturing and businesses have revived the fastest. They are back to normal in their supplies and manufacturing is the first impression I have. And because of that, their ability to support global manufacturing and global customers is improving the status of companies globally, including ourselves. Whenever we are buying in from China, we are getting our supplies on a regular basis. One comment across the world for India, for the world, SMEs in general have been stressed and remain stressed. In the US, we ourselves have received, several companies have received a lot of government funds. Despite receiving those government funds, there are many companies, especially the SMEs, who are still stressed. Many have closed down, and I don't see them opening up again. So it's a mixed bag of some parts of the world starting to revive, most parts of the world having some parts of the whole economy, some SMEs, in depending on the industry, stressed out, closed down, or finding it difficult, even with funding, even with financial support to continue. So this is a very unique situation. There's an opportunity for many SMEs if they could, as Dr. Seetharaman said, if they can relook at their strategy, rethink how to approach business. There is an opportunity of sorts. There is always an opportunity. In every adversity, there is an opportunity. It's more difficult. It's not easy to recognize. But I believe even for India, India is standing on the cusp of a huge opportunity. Worldwide, there is a need for reliable suppliers. The question up in the air is, can Indian suppliers, Indian SMEs meet that challenge? Can they become steadfast in their ability to supply quality product? Can they reach out to good partners? Is it the Qatar Bank? Is it the World Manufacturing Foundation? Is it the SME Chamber of India? The SMEs will have to reach out to different partnering associations and work together with them to revive themselves, remodel themselves. But if they do it, they can grow and really become successful. The world has got a vacuum. China is a great competitive manufacturing country and will remain there. Irrespective of whatever has happened with COVID, the world will still depend to a large extent on China. At the same time, there are many countries, many companies, many associations who would say, let's become a little more independent of China. And that's the opportunity for India, for SMEs, for other organizations around the world, including competitive companies in Italy. And I know many good companies in Italy who are so globally competitive, especially the small SME family-run businesses are outstanding examples of very profitable, normally, maybe not in these times, but profitable and with high technology in Italy especially. So I think there's a need for remodeling, revitalizing ourselves, but partnering. I would again and again tell all SMEs, partner, collaborate, connect, and rethink how to do your business. I want to make one comment which I think is tremendously important. Dr. Alberto again repeatedly commented, very rightly so, on diversity, on the importance of women, on the importance of young people, inclusion. I think these are important factors. His own white paper, the focus on P, I like that. It's a very good way of focusing on a topic. I think all of this has a lot of meaning. I think it would be important for all of us to contribute and support the next conference when it comes up through his foundation. But I think these are important factors which all SMEs must think about, and we all, each of us as associations, I think we should do a lot to reach out, and all these SMEs should reach out to us so that we can all be inclusive in connectivity and support for one another.
Dr. Ribolla, any closing remarks from you? Any comments?
Well, I think that the word that must come out from this is cooperation. We must cooperate for all our companies. Then, of course, competition is competition, but we have to create the framework, institutional, supporting, financial, to have our companies try to change and grow. Changing is not, I will underline in red 100 times, changing is not an option anymore. So companies have to change, they have to change their approach, they have to change their mind. But we have to help them operate, having a better life. Thank you.
Virenji, would you like to say something again?
Again, no, I think thank you very much. I think it's a great opportunity. I think distinguishedly, speakers from across the world coming onto this platform is a very invaluable opportunity for all of us to learn, for all the SME members who are on this session to learn, and I think take strong messages away. There is a future. As Dr. Alberto said, there is a huge future out there, and it's for each of us to pick up on it. If we can all sit back and say we're in a bad situation, or take the message from what Dr. Alberto rightly said and say, how do we grow? How do we become better? How do we become inclusive, collaborate, cooperate? And I would say to everybody, there are organizations, there are associations, the World Manufacturing Foundation, the SME Chamber of India, and others can help one another. I think that's the message. The Qatar Bank, as Dr. Seetharaman said, so much of support he is willing to give. I mean, there are not many banks in the world who would give that opportunity. So I think we need to all remodel ourselves, think differently, grow differently, but don't give up. I think there is hope. There is a strong hope. We must use this unfortunate adversity, but become stronger. I think that's my message to everybody, and utilize the services and the strengths of the SME Chamber and everybody else. There are different associations that I'm trying to say all of us need to collaborate. That's my message really, and my learning for today.
Yes.
Over to you,
Thank you very
Chandrakant.
much. Yes, thank you. Yes, perfect. Rather, this is the role of SME Chamber of India, World SME Trade Center, rather in a World Manufacturing Foundation or SME Technology Development Center. That is the main theme, main objective, to bring the stalwarts together, to share their knowledge, share their the inputs, and rather it is useful for the SME side perspective, because currently we have to give suggestions, guidance to them, and practically we have to support them for a grow more. And this is the work, and this is my role of our chamber, working for the last 27 years. This is a series of global SME economic summit, and we have started the first inaugural. Somehow I'm disappointed that ICC Secretary General couldn't make it today. Very important meeting come up for him, since he is a very high profile person in the international level. So he has promised to address again in the first week of December. So we will be planning now to various programs, and I'm sure that Dr. Alberto will be part of that, because since we have already established our institutional partnership, and we are doing a lot of activities with the various parts of the organization or government agencies, investment board, and mostly the councils. So with these words, I'm thankful to Dr. Seetharaman, Ms. Emmanuelle again, to saying the perspective of the world, the WTO, And a special thanks to Dr. Alberto for sharing his thoughts. And we are going to publish his presentation and his ideas in amongst the manufacturing. And we want to take advantage for the coming days that how we can support the SMEs grow at local level, national level, international level. And thank you really for sharing and sparing time in early morning. I'm sure that today is a holiday in USA, but you are enjoying holiday while giving the lot of ideas, inputs, and mentoring to SME sector. With this was I'm thankful to the listeners and the SME entrepreneurs. Those are joined and those are listening to and those are going to listen post event about this Chinese trade. But lastly, I would like to suggest all the entrepreneurs that unless until your feedback, unless until your suggestions, unless until your problems and issues presented to us, we will not give you the options, suggestions, or guidance. So I welcome all the suggestions and issues and problems to understand from the revival perspective, and we pray that pray to God that the corona should go at the earliest. Go corona, we can say, and we have to come back on the same track for the economic growth of our nation and world. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the speakers, particularly the entrepreneurs. Thank you, Alberto.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.